welcome you into this time with us. We are reminded that you create diversity among us, that you give us the will to speak and the will to listen. Help us to have open minds and hearts as we make decisions and lead this community and this city in a way that is honorable, welcoming, hopeful, and healing. We know that meetings often divide and we have different opinions and ideas, and what's beautiful is that all these differences can come together as we work toward bettering our community, making it more livable, welcoming, and hopeful for our children who are gathered here. We are thankful for the young men who are with us tonight as they will listen and learn and understand a little more about government and life in general. May we be good witnesses to model this creative spirit that you give us, the spirit of hospitality and openness, of warmth and of respectfulness. Thank you for the witnesses in this room, the minds online, the ideas that put all of this information together, those who have worked here at City Hall and further who have worked long and hard on decisions and ideas. May we all understand and grow a little closer as we work toward a beautiful Watertown. Amen.
Thank you. All right, it is 7:01, so I'm going to call to order our Tuesday, February 6th council meeting. Megan, will you please take the roll?
Davis. Here. Lampy.
Here.
Board.
Here.
Bartz. Here. Blanky.
Here.
Smith. Here. Schmid. Here. Wetzel. Here. Moldenhauer. Here.
And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on our agenda is the minutes of the council meeting from January 16th. Comments or questions from anybody on those minutes? All right, then let's move to comments and suggestions from citizens present. Megan.
Aaron Schrader, 1411 South 10th Street.
Hi, I'm Erin Schrader. I own Run and Errands on 4th Street. I'm a resident of Watertown. I'm also part of the Tavern League and the licensing board for the city of Watertown. The reason why I wanted to come speak tonight is because it's my understanding that there's going to be an ordinance change under the 125, which would allow the city to hire bartenders that would be paid by the city. I'm not for this, I'm not against it, I just feel like I haven't had enough information to feel comfortable and make a proper decision on it. And here are a few of the reasons that I kind of had questioned and also other people in my industry had questioned. One of the questions was, is the bartender, or is the said city bartender going to be educated by the bartender awareness class? If so, who's going to pay for that? Where there'll be background checks and licenses provided for those who pass the class. If so, who is going to pay for that? How will they be paid? Not by 1099 because they're not contractors, so it would be actual city payroll. What will they be paid? For example, if they're paid $15 an hour, 6 people to run an event, that's $90 per hour. If it's 90 hours per hour for a 6-hour event, that's $540. $540 times 4 events a month, that's $2,160. By 32 weeks, that's $69,120. Are the taxpayers okay for paying that? Then we move on to tips. Okay, well, bartenders are generally tipped employees. Who's going to pay the taxes on those tips? We had a roundtable discussion last night, and we brought up a lot of these things, but they were things that couldn't be answered in that discussion. The roundtable was great. It was very informative, but there was just a lot of unknowns. One of the suggestions was that in the past, they have given the tips to a charitable organization. That's great, except for now those people aren't donating their time, they're actually employees, so they have to claim every dollar that they made. That means they have to pay taxes on those tips. So if I was the bartender and I was paying taxes on those tips, I don't know that I'd want to just give them away. So that was another thing that we kind of stumbled upon last night, is what's gonna go on with the tips? How are they gonna distribute those? One of the concerns I kind of thought about is I follow the city pages and I watch and I share them, and I try to help in every way that I can. So when I see that we are closing the pool down because we don't have enough staff to keep the pool open for regular hours, to me, those would be similarly paid positions. If we can't keep the pool fully staffed and open and operating, how are we going to keep bartenders on staff? That kind of also raised awareness in my industry, and something that we all kind of talked about. $15 an hour for a bartender, we can't compete with that. I don't know any bartender in the city of Watertown that's just a basic bartender that gets paid $15 an hour. When I ask, the range that we came up with was $8 to $12. So it would be very, very hard for us to compete with that, or even play the same game or feel like we're on the same playing field. I mean, from $10 to $15, that's a lot of money.
Erin, you're over on your time. Do
Okay.
will you wrap? You can finish if you have the
Sure.
last few things, if you can just go for it.
I only have one more point,
Okay.
really.
Thank you.
I feel like most of these questions could have been answered if they came through licensing board, but for some reason, something regarding alcohol did not come through licensing board. When I spoke to the Tavern League about it, the one thing that they asked is that we could put this on hold until the revisions of statute 125 go through within the next couple months. It's going to change how bartenders are licensed, so they can get a state license or they could get a city license. So that was the Tavern League's feedback on it, to see if we could put it on hold until those changes are made to 125. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Mike Hoppenrath, 1302 Newcastle Court.
Good evening again, Mike Hoppenrath. You each should have received a letter that I sent to you. I won't go over that again, but I do want to add that I was told there are no plans for this change of land use that anybody can review. So based on that, I can only speculate that this is not going to add to our values, but only decrease them. So based on that and the reasons I gave in my letter, I would ask that you vote against ordinance 2409. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else, Megan? All right, we do have another opportunity at the end of our meeting for public comment as well. So let's go to reports. You have the Park, Rec, and Forestry minutes of December 18th, the Senior Center Advisory Board of October 17th, Plan Commission from December 11th and January 8th, Tourism from January 11th, RDA from January 17th, Site Plan from January 22nd, Public Works from January 23rd, and the Main Street Task Force from January 24th. Comment?
Question?
Yeah, Mr. Board.
Park and Rec minutes indicate that they have a new vision and mission statement that they voted on. I can't find it in the minutes. Is that available?
I can make sure you get it. I'll send that out to all of you.
Thank you.
Mr. Blinky.
First one, I'd like to commend some forward vision on the underlighting of the Cole Main Street Bridge. Item number 1, putting conduit in but not lighting it because it costs too much right now. I'll go back to a council meeting several months ago. The cost for the study to put in the lighting was $50,000. So I think putting in the conduit is forward thinking. That way it gives us the option to do it, but it also takes the cost of it into consideration. The second item I have is also on the Parks and Recreation and Forestry Commission minutes from December 18th. It's item 5B, review and approve the 2024 part-time wages. I commend the committee for increasing the wages for the lifeguards, pool managers, et cetera, because we are having a hard time staffing that area. However, I do have one question on that. It was mentioned that there is a desire to have a cost of living increase. And I'm just curious as to the discussion on that. How would that be handled? Would it be indexed to the CPI? Would it be an automatic increase every year with no vote by finance, the council, the park and rec? So I'm just curious as to the mechanism that would be put in place for that. Because when you put something in, it's kind of like we used to have the automatic increase in the gas tax in Wisconsin. It always goes up. The market has no say in it, and politicians, people serving on councils, don't ever have to be accountable for those increases. So I'm just curious as to how that discussion went down and what the desire is there.
Mr. Lampe, I don't want to put you on the spot. Were you at that one? No is an okay answer.
I don't know if I
Okay.
can add anything.
I know that Christine, do you want to comment on that? It looks like you're on remotely, but I don't, oh, there she goes.
Yeah, hi. Yes, so it wasn't a discussion of that it was going. It was, we were in discussion with finance. We had to talk about it. So it was a potential, but it hadn't gone any further than that. But they were just inquiring on if it could go
So
to be cost of living.
at this point, the only wage adjustments that have been approved are the ones dictated in the minutes, right? The $1.75 for pool managers, the $1 for swim instructors, et cetera. The cost of
Correct.
living was more a conceptual conversation at this point,
Yes.
so that would have to go back if it were to be something that would be instituted.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Who else? Yeah, Mr. Schmid.
Those raises were part of the budget for this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Anybody else? All right. Then let's move to communications and recommendations. We do have a presentation this evening. So Chief, would you like to introduce our guest?
Here. We've got with us Detective Sergeant Dan Horvatin with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Drug Task Force. He's their supervisor. The Drug Task Force is a joint effort where area agencies contribute. We actually contribute by assigning a full-time officer to his agency. And he's here today to give us kind of a rundown on how things have been going.
I move around a lot, so I'm going to carry the mic. I
Oh, let me
apologize a little bit.
Let me switch your presentation on here quick.
Thank you. So, as Chief mentioned, my name's Dan Horvatin, Detective Sergeant with Jefferson County. So I've been with Jefferson County for 23 years. For about the past 4.5 years, I've been running the task force. Prior to that, I was a detective. Prior to that, I worked patrol. And prior to that, in the courthouse and the jail. So I kind of wanted to explain, because Watertown has sent someone to work the task force for a long time. Give you kind of some background information, because many people don't know much about us. And obviously, I don't look like this every day. I look a lot dirtier, and you probably wouldn't recognize me in the normal days, course of our duties. But I wanted to talk about that, and then I wanted to actually talk a little bit more about some of the operations we've conducted, because there is kind of this misnomer out here, you know, that we don't really necessarily have a drug problem. And I think we've got pretty significant problems, and it's just going under the radar, because a lot of what we see are transplants from Madison and Milwaukee that then come out here because the perception is we don't have police. So, so that's kind of where we're going with this. So all of the members you see listed on this slide are included. They're either members by providing a full-time officer, or they're providing monetary compensation towards the task force. Our overall goal is really to combat the sale and distribution of controlled substances in our area, which, you know, with that distribution, we have a lot of collateral crime that occurs. And so you might be thinking, well, we don't really have that much crime. Well, the things that go along with drug dealing include human trafficking, include burglaries, robberies, sexual assaults. So there's a significant amount, all kind of that have an origin with drug dealing and drug use. So the other thing that we're working against is demand reduction. So trying to get people the treatment they need. It's very difficult out here because treatment is hard to come by, but it is one component. And also education, right? So doing things like this that we actually can let people know kind of what's going on, what to look for, talking to schools, human service workers, probation and parole agents. So when they're supervising people, they actually know what to be looking for. So a steering committee governs the operations of the task force. We meet quarterly, so all of the police chiefs that are members of the task force supervise what we do. I'm the project director, so I lead the day-to-day operations of the task force on a daily basis. And so our agreement covers responsibilities of the agencies, my responsibilities, disposition of the property. I'm going to see if I can set this down. I talk loud, so if you can't hear me, let me know. And the monetary compensation that is in hours that is requested. So this is just an example of the breakdown based on population of how the member agencies actually contribute. So the smaller agencies that don't provide a person actually provide hourly reimbursement for hours that are worked by officers of the task force. How do we generate our cases? Well, we receive information from everybody, whether it's probation or parole, citizens, and this is actually where everybody kind of fits in that's not kind of an officer, and even other officers, right? So providing information, something that does not seem right to you, you should not be afraid to call and report that information. From what you know, it might look like just odd behavior, but it might actually be a detail on a case that we've been working for a long time, and that might be the piece of the puzzle we need in order to actually go further with the investigation. So our contact information will be listed at the end of this presentation, but if something doesn't seem right, trust your instincts and by all means pass along the information, because again, you may or may not know what exactly is going on, and it does help. So and then based on reports, everything is kept confidential. We receive that information and then we decide on what we're going to do. So a lot of different factors are involved in what we're going to do. Some of it just has to be the drug being sold, right? So if we attacked marijuana every day, that we would never get to the harder drugs that are out here. Obviously, marijuana is everywhere with legalization surrounding our state. So, but weapons involved, children involved, and I mentioned we target dealers, but if there's children involved, we actually go after that, and we get involved with human services to prevent drug-endangered children, which we'll talk about in a second. So some of the other things that we do are saturation patrols, so drug interdiction, that's what DI stands for, overdose death investigations, fugitive apprehension. One of the unique talents of a team that I direct is, again, we don't look like your average police officer, so we can blend in. We look kind of dirty, to put it nicely, and we can utilize covert approaches to take people into custody and not have them fight like they would or run. So we've assisted in homicide investigations, child porn, property crimes, fleeing, and OWI investigations. And you'll see some of that as we talk about some of the cases. So one little bit about addiction I think is important for us as we talk about drugs and the impact they have on society, and that's specifically how addiction affects your brain and drug use affects your brain. We know now, based on neurobiology, that frontal lobes of individuals and children don't fully form until the people are between 23 to 25 years old. And that's really significant as we start talking about, this whole medical marijuana and the legalization aspect that we're seeing, bill that's in the state legislature. Because, again, if we look at that and we say, okay, well, 23 to 25 years old, drug use really affects that development, even when they're of legal age, potentially, right, to consume some of these things. Because of that, so it's something that we really need to look at and we need to be aware of as, again, the cannabis is spreading throughout our area and just the state in general because of the legalization all around us. And so one of the other things just to mention as we talk about addiction and treatment, you might ask yourself, and one of the things that we see is, well, why do these people go into jail, get out, and right away overdose and die? Well, there's a significant reason, and part of it has to do with this slide up here that you see. So you can see the colors on that brain imaging scan, okay, where you've got yellow and red up here. Well, that's normal brain activity. When people start using drugs, cocaine in this particular example, you can see how much brain activity there is after 10 days without cocaine. The brain is just starting to really kind of repair itself, but really it's significant at the 100-day mark, which means realistically, if we really want to prevent these people who are users, they need to really be prevented from using for at least 100 days. So the argument can be made, how do you do that? Inpatient treatment where they don't have access to drugs is one mechanism, but as you can see, the decision-making process really is really not restored or better until you reach that point. So it's just something else to be aware of as you talk about addiction and you talk about treatment. So I mentioned drug-endangered children. We don't target users. However, in cases with children involved, we will. And you'll see in this example. But kids have the right to be protected from the manufacture or distribution of controlled substances. And one of the endangering parts of this not only is the fact that the kids can overdose, right, which is a big thing, and you'll see that in this next slide, but also all of the other things that come collaterally with that. So sexual abuse, physical abuse, just being in the presence of seeing their parents doing drugs and have to save their parents who overdose, right? So nobody wants to see that. This is a Watertown case, obviously not that long ago, 2023. In this particular case, the mother of a child called 911 because her kid, they thought, was having a seizure. So 18 months old, all right? And they transported the kid to the hospital, and they thought, okay, this is going to be a seizure. Well, the doctor did everything he could, and he's like, well, this kid's not getting better. Something's weird. And so smart doctor said, let's just try Narcan, okay, naloxone, which binds to the opiate receptor in the brain. Let's try that and see what happens. Obviously, the kid came back, became lucid again, right, became responsive. And so after that, a search warrant was, because, again, naloxone only binds to the opiate receptor in your brain. A search warrant was executed at the house. Small amount of controlled substances and paraphernalia were found. One of the items, a scale, I believe, tested positive for fentanyl. So the father was charged in that particular case. What's aggravating in this particular case is this dad could have said, yeah, okay, I relapsed, and this is, it could be an opiate overdose. He didn't do that in this case. Instead of coming back, to actually go to the hospital, he went and got an attorney, So really cares about his kid, right? So that's just the drug endangered children component of that. And Human Services was involved. So what are some of the drugs we're seeing in Jefferson County? This is just an indoor grow. This guy had been growing marijuana for a long time. In this particular case, he had guns positioned all around the doors, entryways of the house. And unfortunately, fortunately for us, he passed away probably of a heart attack in his driveway, and this is how we found out about this particular place. This is just a campground where they were growing marijuana outside. Obviously, we have cocaine, crack, heroin. Those are just some track marks. Coincidentally, if you don't know, people don't only inject heroin, they inject methamphetamine and they inject cocaine. So one of the big dangers nowadays, too, are what are called M30 pills. They're fake Percocet pills. You've probably heard about it on the news. We see these around here as well, and they contain fentanyl, and a lot of people think they're taking a pain pill, and they end up overdosing and dying because it's actually fentanyl. So methamphetamine, this was a buy bust that we did, and there's 3 ounces of meth in there. So this is what is commonly referred to as a bubble. These are sold at most of your gas stations, okay? And this is used to smoke methamphetamine. And just next time you go into a gas station to actually buy something, look, you'll probably see these in plain sight. Mushrooms, LSD, that, by the way, is blotter paper. And these are gel tabs. So this is just kind of a list of our seizures from 2018 to 2023. Some of the larger seizures you'll see as we go through the presentation. But there's significant things going on in Jefferson County. As I mentioned previously, why do you think that is? That's because there's the perception of people from Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Rockford, that we don't have a lot of police, and they can fly under the radar a lot longer, a lot easier, and also people will pay more for the drugs out here. So death stats, in 2022 we had 22 overdose-related deaths. In 2023 it's between 16 and 20. And you'll see a lot of this, the numbers, if you added them up, they're more than 22, obviously, for 2022, and that's because there's a combined drug overdose with multiple different drugs. So just on this note about weed and marijuana, because again, this is that the legislature has a medical marijuana bill up in the legislature. And so just to be aware, in this particular study, there was a 24% increase in psychosis. So that's one of the things that you're seeing with heavy marijuana use. Another thing that we're seeing is kids accidentally overdosing, young kids, because the gummy bears that they think are gummy bears are actually edible marijuana things. So just another thing that, as that conversation takes place, these are things that need to be thought about. So a really great website that really gives real-time data for any of you that are interested is www.thenmi.org. So the National Marijuana Initiative is really a good site that gives you real-time data and what the actual legalization efforts out west have brought. So a lot of what we're seeing is drug driving, so significant increase in drug driving and a significant increase in property crimes. So so we'll go into kind of some of the cases now. So this is another Watertown case. This dates back to 2019. In this particular case, was kind of starting or in the middle phase when I took over the task force. So this was a case by Detective Jake Wright. We had a guy, this Illinois gang member, who decided to take up residence in Watertown. kilo level, so that's kilo, 2.2 pounds of cocaine level, right? So each kilo is about 2.2 pounds. So a significant dealer. We ended up doing our investigation. A search warrant was executed in conjunction with a takedown of this particular person. He was charged federally. They recovered cocaine. And when we did the search warrant in Watertown, multiple firearms were recovered. And I guess I should just mention, so this is the nightstand next to his bed. This is under his pillow. On the other side of the bed. And this is under the bed. So he was ready to go, right? So thank God nothing bad happened in that. But this is another case in Fort Atkinson. We hit this house actually 3 times, serving search warrants. Convicted felons, possession of firearms. And these 2 people were given prison sentences. There's another particular meth dealer in the city of Jefferson, literally a stone's throw away, kitty corner from the courthouse. This guy was selling meth. There was a report by the neighbors downstairs of strange odors coming through the vents. So because we knew he was a meth dealer, one of the concerns was whether or not this particular guy had a meth lab there. Meth labs are very volatile, very dangerous. Byproducts are bad, right? So we ended up doing a search warrant with the state, who has special breathing apparatuses to do the warrant because breathing in those chemicals are toxic. Ultimately, it wasn't a meth lab, but he did have meth, a firearm, and cash. And so this particular guy was then arrested a few months later, which you'll see. And this is the town of Oakland. So at this particular time, 6 months later, give or take, the same guy, hasn't figured it out yet. And so he was staying with some people. So this town of Oakland, if you don't know where that is, that's between Jefferson and Cambridge off of Highway 18. So in this particular circumstance, the residents there got tired of him, although, as you'll see, it really wasn't that they got tired of him. They wanted to take his drugs and money. So they called him in because he was wanted, and he ended up getting arrested by us. And then several days later, we learned that actually the people there got him arrested to take his drugs and money. So we went back and we did another warrant at the place and got the other drugs and money that they took. So this is just some of what we got. So this is a bigger case too, in Lake Mills, Cherokee Path, so right off the interstate. This particular guy was a gangbanger from Madison, originally Chicago ties. And this particular guy, again, convicted felon. We had information of a stash house in Lake Mills. This guy is known to have weapons as well. And we did a warrant at the place. Coincidentally, he was taking up residence in a condo, right above a condo owned by one of the Lake Mills police officers. Convenient, right? So, search warrant in this particular case, we had several other guns that were turned in, but we found a rifle and then a significant amount of methamphetamine. So, 2.36 pounds is a lot, right? So, and then also a little over a pound and a half of heroin. So this was heroin, fentanyl, bromphene. So this was literally an operation where he was manufacturing at this apartment. There was a pill press there. So just the street value on that, $144,000. But given the dose level, I mean, this could have killed lots of people who ingested it. So, South Shore Drive in Palmyra, another particular interesting case. This particular guy was on parole, right? So when you think of people who are on parole or on community supervision through the Department of Corrections, you think they're getting reformed, right? They're going to not commit any more crimes. Well, obviously we know that's not true. So he was receiving drugs through the mail at that particular address, and we performed a search. We found a firearm, controlled substances, marijuana wax, a firearm there, large amount of MDMA or methylene dioxymethamphetamine in the safe. That's LSD. And then there's we thought that was heroin originally. Turned out it was MDMA. But another instance, Lake Mills. Lake Mills seems to be conveniently located, but Watertown as well, as you'll see. That it's right on the interstate, and people are taking up residence there. But this particular case, we worked with Dane County Narcotics Task Force. This particular individual was involved in selling fentanyl, involved in a drug overdose death in the city of Madison. Convicted felon, and again, lengthy criminal history with weapons violations. One of the cohorts involved with this guy, shortly before we executed the search warrant, was involved in having a weapon with a full auto switch on it, so a machine gun, basically. So I'm part of the SWAT team. I'm one of the team leaders, so we planned the warrant. In this particular case, the suspect was arrested, and there was a firearm again located in the basement, and then more controlled substances, a lot of dealing. And so, again, 243 grams of fentanyl, it's a lot of heroin, cocaine, MDMA pills, and then the firearm. So this is a fine, upstanding Watertown resident who's now finally, thank God, in jail for a little bit. This particular guy was, who we know, was coming back from Milwaukee after just picking up a load. He ended up crossing the center line as he was coming back to Watertown. This was in Ixonia on Highway F, and ended up hitting a car head on. Thank God he didn't kill the people that were involved. Everybody was okay. He was dazed and out of it. He went to the hospital for evaluation. We knew him, and so inside this box were 108 baggies of cocaine. So this person, he was operating under the influence, and was subsequently arrested from a follow-up investigation we did. Charges are pending. This particular case, North High Street in Fort Atkinson, this is another guy that hasn't learned. He's still at it, but this particular case, confidential informant bought lots of drugs off of this particular person. When we executed a search warrant at this residence, 3 ounces of methamphetamine were found. So another Lake Mills case. This particular guy, again, Chicago ties, gang ties, convicted felon. In this particular case, he sold to a confidential informant. We hit a search warrant at this particular place. Again, a firearm, and this was actually a nice, he put it in a nice little package for us. So in his safe, he had his money, his drugs, his firearm, and his ID. It's like you don't get that very often, right? So there's his cocaine. So another particular, so this guy was charged, obviously, and I should mention, he's in our jail as we speak. So Waterloo, another particular fine, upstanding citizen, sold cocaine, and then there were reports that he was growing marijuana in the backyard of his residence. So this picture, just, you're probably wondering, well, this is just baggies. What's significant about this? You may or may not be able to tell, but the corners are cut off of these baggies. So that's significant because people use baggies, and when they put their cocaine or their drugs in the bag, they tie it, put them in the corner, right? They tie it, and then they cut off the top that's all flopping around, because then it's easier to contain, and you can package multiple items inside there. So so this is just some of his controlled substances. There's a scale, and then there's his marijuana growing in the backyard. This is another interesting case. Again, Watertown. This is a larger seizure, just something to be aware of. So this particular case, was multiple street level buys that led into these particular people in the city of Watertown. We ended up executing a search warrant at the residence, locating cash and taking one of our people into custody. A vehicle associated with this group. We executed a search warrant and located 8.5 kilos of cocaine. So street value is about $212,000. So 8.5 kilos, that's a lot. 18.74 pounds. So there was a firearm at the residence as well. And this is just an example. So in some of these packaging materials, so we got part of it. I don't think we got everything. But these particular individuals are associated, we believe, with a Mexican drug cartel. One of them, we have several that we believe are working in and around the Jefferson County area. And this one I'm just going to leave up. I'm almost at the end briefly. This is another one the next day, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to move from that, but I'll just talk about that particular case. So that was another case involving DEA, Jefferson County's Drug Task Force, and Walworth County's Drug Task Force. That particular load was brought up, and it's actually a distribution point, and there were 141 kilos of cocaine that we recovered. So just to put that into perspective, 141 kilos, the estimated street value was somewhere between $2 to $9 million. So, and also firearms, $200,000 of cash. And that's right on the Jefferson, Walworth County line. So it's obviously pretty significant, right? So, if you don't think we have a drug problem, we kind of do, right? So, but that's just a little bit to kind of give you a flavor of what's out here. And part of the reason we do these type of presentations is just so people understand what's really going on. Much of what we do, we don't talk about because we continually are working, trying to get up the chain and get the bigger fish, so to speak. So the other thing just to mention is the value of being part of the task force with the people that do this work or have done this work, especially for the law enforcement angle, is significant. They possess a unique set of skills. Almost sounds like a movie, right? Kids could probably tell me where that comes from, but that really fits their communities throughout their career because there's outside the box thinking and kind of the experience they get pays dividends down the road. So it's not just about drugs, but we use the skills that they've learned and we do to solve other cases, right? Burglaries, robberies, homicides, things like that. So the other thing just to mention is support's important because the officers are expected, middle of the night to get called out for any sort of operation. So to assist or investigate. So I just say support your local police department. It's a challenging time for law enforcement for sure. Getting good people is where it starts. And we got to get good people. Most of my team, with a few exceptions, have 10 to 15 years of experience. So as we need to train the next generation, it's really important to get the good officers. So these are the contact information for all of us at the task force, and you're welcome to call, take down that if you have any information. Please feel free to reach out. It'll be kept confidential, and I'd be glad to hear from you. And I would just mention, I'm at the end. I tried not to take up too much of your time, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them for you.
I appreciate it very much. I was thinking, I think I've been here for almost 11 years, and this is the first time we've been able to have like a public presentation about the task force. I get just a tiny bit of information of the important work that you guys do, just in case I get asked, like what happened at Perry Street, as an example. But I'm just continually just in awe of the willingness of people like yourselves and our officers that are willing to give time and time again to this really important cause. And it may have been a lot for the kids in this room, but I hope that you understand, I mean, what an incredible message for these young men to hear. So I'm really serendipitous timing in a lot of ways. So questions, Mr. Moldenhauer?
On that marijuana, the medical marijuana part. Now, they take the hygienic out of that stuff, don't they? Just use it for medical purposes, right?
Well, so that's an interesting thing. It's really a slippery slope, and it ends up trickling down and ends up that you are still people still get high from it. People that have terminal illnesses, I think everybody would agree that anything you can do to make them comfortable is going to be valuable. I think the challenge becomes what is really a medical necessity, right? Because the chronic pain comes into play, and yet there is chronic pain. I've had 2 back surgeries, so I know what pain's like. But it's a slippery slope, and you end up, developing the pain clinics, which is what kind of got us into the opiate problem that we had, the overprescription of OxyContin and things like that. So it is a slippery slope. Do I think it's probably going to happen? Yeah, probably. But I think we have to just be really cautious about this, and the conversation should be real, and because there's always the conversation of everything is an upside and there's no downsides, and of course there's a lot of downsides.
The only reason I asked that question, I've known people that had glaucoma, and that was recommended that they do that for the glaucoma. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's lots of recommendations out there. I would point you back to the website that I listed in there, because it's not me saying that. That's some of the data that they've seen and the issues that have arisen with legalization in those states. So, and it's a great educational resource for everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Others?
Just a couple for you. I appreciate you showing the medical imaging of the brain scan. A critique on that, though, is context. So it's three stagnant imaging, the before, the on, and after, with no context in regards to where that data comes from. Is it male, female? What's the age? What was the length of time on the cocaine? Were there other substances that add to it? What is the realistic detoxification? So those all things matter when it comes to what does the brain take to recover from that in a comparison to what a healthy brain looks like versus one in alcohol, which is a legal substance. Just a comparison for that. The other one was the marijuana one. I would include in your data the number of different types of marijuana plants that fall under that genus of plants, because some are used specifically for fibers and ropes and have no THC value, that aren't used in drug trafficking and aren't tied to that, but they still fall in that genus. And so having that bigger understanding, because you said you want to have that conversation, and I agree, we need to have that. We need to have the actual raw data. And do I agree that there are issues of just carte blanche handing out willy-nilly? Yes. And so that's one thing. I appreciate the large-scale distribution busts that have happened recently. Those are no small feats. I do have a question. You don't have to answer it now. I would just, we can follow up later, is tracking the lethality of the fentanyl that's produced locally versus the stuff that you're finding coming in from down south. The one thing I've tracked out of Chicago is the stuff coming up in the cartel is created by people with PhDs and master's level work in chemistry and engineering. So it's controlled to be safer versus the stuff that people create up here with no training and just throw crap together and people die a lot faster. So I'd be curious to see what you're tracking for those numbers locally.
So let me address your first couple points really quick. I won't belabor it. So the imaging scans, we could go down a rabbit hole with that, which I was trying to be brief. Yeah, there's no data that I could give you specifically on those slides about how long the drug use was, other than to say, on average, I think the thought process was 90 to 100 days. The brain then starts repairing itself after drug use. The bigger concern with that is just treatment, right? Keeping people isolated from drug use so their brains can repair themselves enough to where they can be able to kind of make better decisions, and the craving isn't necessarily there, and they're more likely to be successful for treatment. Another good point on the marijuana, I was using cannabis. When I speak about marijuana, obviously I'm not speaking about industrial hemp or CBD. I'm specifically talking about marijuana. One of the things just to know, right, Delta 8, so Delta 9 THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, which is prohibited, but the Farm Bill legalized industrial hemp and its derivatives. So that means Delta 8 THC is being sold at lots of hemp shops, which is legal and does have a psychoactive active effect. So does THC 0, right? So that's another one that was manufactured, from hemp and then made, synthesized, I guess would be extracted would be a better term, which also has some estimates are that it's 4 times as potent as regular marijuana or Delta 9 THC. So it is a slippery slope with that. And I won't go down that road too much other than to say there's lots of obviously cannabis products. The two things just to mention is, and we're seeing it, they've seen it out west, legalization has meant an increase in impaired driving for sure, which is significant for all of us because anybody that operates on the road or walks next to a road, we've got to be aware of that, and that's a significant thing. Lastly, most of what we know as far as fentanyl is that it is coming across the border. I haven't seen any labs per se that are trying to synthesize it themselves. Most of what happens is either they come in the pill form already, like the M30s like we saw up here, or they get some sort of powdered form and then it's mixed. And so the reason for the overdoses lots of times is because we've got a lot of home cooks that get the fentanyl and then they add it to whatever. A lot of times it's cocaine to make it more potent. And when they do that, and it's obviously, they don't have a chemistry background, and even if they did, the concentration, lethal concentration of fentanyl is very, very, very small, that they just get, it's not mixed, homogeneous, I guess, if that's the right term. It's not well mixed, so you could get a hot batch. But most of what we're seeing is not home synthetic people. They're getting the fentanyl and mixing it. So good question, though. Thank you.
Others? Mr. Molnar.
I'd like to thank you for the job you're doing and people associated with the people that you're working with every day.
Well, thank you. Yep, I appreciate it, and we just one of the important things of doing this is so that people can kind of see where we're at and what we're dealing with. The perception I've heard, because I've done about 4 other meetings in the county, is kind of an eye-opener for a lot of people because they kind of think that we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. I mean, okay, we're on the outskirts of the big crime problems in Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago, but because of where we're situated, we see a lot coming through, and also coming to this area, people realize they can make more money because people then don't have to travel to Milwaukee or Madison to go get their stuff, and so they're taking up residence out here, and they make more money, and there's less competition for some of them. So,
Any last questions? All right. Thank you again. I really
all right.
appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
We will, while they get their stuff picked up, we're going to continue with our meeting. So let's move ahead to new business. The first item is the committee appointments for your consideration. Is there a motion on those? Motion by Mr. Board, second by Mr. Bartz. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, here comes that weird part of the meeting where I'm going to take a motion, we'll take a vote, and then I'm going to ask everyone to step out. So you don't have to go yet. But with that, could I please have a motion to go to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren G? This is to confer with legal counsel for the city who is rendering oral and written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by this body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. This pertains to P. Byers versus the city, Schaefer versus the city, and Vierstaller versus the city. Is there such a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Schmid, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Megan, will you please take the roll?
Schmid?
Aye.
Wetzel? Moldenhauer? Davis? Lampy?
Aye.
Board? Bartz? Blanky?
Aye.
Smith? Motion passed 9-0.
Very good. So if you all wouldn't mind just stepping out into the hallway, and then we will call you back in just a minute. For those attending remotely, it'll just be quiet for just a moment. Lisa S., do you mind closing that door when you step out? Thank you. All right, I'm going to keep us moving here. The next item is the accounts payable, but we do not have any this evening. So then let's move to miscellaneous business. You have the payroll summary from December 27th through January 9th and January 10th through January 23rd. Does anyone have any comments on the payroll summary? All right, let's move to ordinances. Our first is ordinance 24-02. This is to amend section 500-9, parking prohibited in specified places. This is here from Ms. Davis in Public Safety and Welfare on the second reading. Mr. Blanky.
Make a motion for ordinance
2402.
2402. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Davis. Questions or comments on this parking ordinance? Megan.
Blanky?
Aye.
Smith? Schmid?
Aye.
Wetzel? Moldenhauer? Davis? Lampy? Board? Bartz? Motion passed 9-0.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 24-03. This is to repeal and recreate section 428-7, special events, and create 428-9, city-sponsored parades of the City of Watertown General Code. This is here from Ms. Davis in Public Safety and Welfare on the second reading. Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve ordinance 24-03.
Motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Board. Questions, comments? Mr. Lampy.
Thank you. I once again want to thank the Public Safety Committee for incorporating the feedback from event organizers into this ordinance and for incorporating a couple of good things into it. Two of these I've been looking for since the Finance Council asked for revisions that would better prepare us to safely host events like Pride in the Park in 2024 and beyond. One of those is the removal of taxpayer subsidies for events. The current ordinance essentially gives new events 3 free years of city services in the first 5 years, and this revision removes all those subsidies. The other is the part about the city providing a cost estimate for services to event organizers ahead of their event. This is an important piece of feedback in planning any event and allows the cities to engage in a conversation rather than the current system of potentially surprise bills. And there were 2 other things that I liked in the ordinance. One was the provision to check into the backgrounds of event organizers, and the other is the filing of emergency plans, which encourage the kind of close relationship with police and fire that events like Riverfest enjoy today. So I don't want you to think that it's all bad, but I also think we could have gotten these improvements by tweaking the existing ordinance rather than inventing something new. We're taking kind of a big government approach here, and the burden's going to fall disproportionately on the shoulders of the event organizers who have safely put on special events for years and who nearly unanimously stand in opposition to this rewrite. So I'm voting no tonight, but I sincerely hope these changes have the desired effect. And again, thank you for adapting the ordinance in committee.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions on the second reading? Megan?
Davis.
Aye.
Lampy.
No.
Board.
Aye.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Schmid.
Aye.
Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-1.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 24-04. This was meant to amend the 2019 City of Watertown Comprehensive Plan to change the future land use category of 1110 South 10th and 1111 South 10th, and to change the text in figure 7.7. This is here from me and the Plan Commission with a positive recommendation on the second reading. That was a mouthful. Who's got me on this one?
I'll move for 2404.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Blanky, second by Mr. Bartz. Questions, comments on the second reading of this one? Yes, sir.
Question on that. I've got a letter, and it talks about salvage yard and junkyard. And I've got concerned citizens over in my area, and we're looking at a situation. When you say junkyard, exactly what does junkyard mean? Are we going to have like cars in there or something along that line where you might have some areas where you'd have rodents that could live there? Salvage yard generally is metal, I believe. But I'm concerned about looking at all the parameters of that, because we don't want a rodent problem or a mouse problem. And I'd just like a little more information on exactly what's going to happen there.
So Brian, I'm going to come to you in just a second. I just want to clarify. So what this is doing is changing a land use category. So it's allowing it to go from planned mixed use to mixed industrial. And then in mixed industrial, there would be a variety of uses of that zoning, which is what you're getting at. So Brian, can you speak to some of the potential projects that could happen in mixed industrial?
Sure, it's any type of industrial use could be, it could be rezoned either general industrial or heavy industrial. In this case, the parcel's already zoned heavy industrial, and the general category of salvage yards and junk yards includes recycling centers, and that's generally what the intention here is, to do a recycling center where they collect various scrap metal, package it up, and ship it to a larger facility in Madison.
Along with that, you also have your recycling. You can be talking about paper goods or something like that, or not? What are we talking here?
I think
Because like I said, we're looking at the rodent problem. That's what we're concerned with.
I can, Brian, can you speak to if it could be paper goods, and then I can answer the rest?
It's possible, but the intention here is strictly metals.
And if it were to be something beyond metal, is that something allowed by right? Or would that be something before the Plan Commission?
They would probably have to revise their conditional use permit.
So I think that maybe, that's what I was hoping Brian would say. So it could be based on this land use change,
That further if that happens.
but they would have to come back before the Plan Commission for a conditional use permit.
We can resolve that as saying, as of right now, it won't happen, I guess then I would be in favor of it.
Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments on this one? Megan? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt.
So we're doing this with the condition that there's already somebody interested in that parcel to put a business in there that would benefit from this change, to make it easier in regards to the processing, the paperwork, the conditional use permit. So is that my understanding that correctly?
We're changing the future land use to allow for use to return to that parcel that was once its use. So the parcel is being returned to a metal recycling facility. There is a project in the pipe that would be ready to go. What we did when we revised the 2019 comp plan is we changed future land uses. That land use, after 5 years, hasn't come to pass, but this project has, and we looked carefully as a city team at that and felt that it was worthwhile to present this all to you.
So I have other questions related to the specific potential plan unrelated to this, so.
I would encourage you to connect with, when you raise your hand, the lady in red after
Okay.
the meeting. Other comments or questions? Megan?
Blanky,
Aye.
Smith,
Abstain.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Wetzel,
Aye.
Moldenhauer, Davis, Lampy,
Aye.
Board, Bartz.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-0.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 24-05. This is to amend Chapter 550 of our zoning code through the addition of language to Section 550-53D, Pren 1, Pren B. This is again here from me and the Plan Commission with a positive recommendation on its second reading. Is there a motion on this one?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Blanky. Was it a second, Mr. Lampy? And a second by Mr. Lampy. Comments or questions from anyone? Megan?
Blanky,
Aye.
Smith,
Abstain.
Schmidt, Wetzel, Moldenhauer, Davis, Lampy, Board, Bartz.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you. Let's switch off of zoning for a second and go to ordinance 24-06. This is to amend section 76-6 of the accounts payable, section 114-7D, rules of procedure, rule 4, Pren 10, in section 114-7, rule 9, accounts payable in our city code. This is here from me and the finance committee on its first reading.
Also move.
Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer. Ooh, all of you at once. Second by Mr. Bartz. Comments or questions for our finance director on this one? Yes.
Is there a 2-minute version of what
Yeah.
this is going to change?
I bet you there's a 10-second version of what this will change.
This allows the update of the purchasing policy that you're going to see as a resolution tonight to be able to go forward. These are some housekeeping things that need to happen in order to influence things like the agenda of this meeting.
Any other comments or questions on this one? Megan?
Moldenhauer, Davis, Lampy, Board, Bartz,
Aye.
Blanky,
Aye.
Smith, Schmidt,
Aye.
Wetzel. Motion passed 9-0.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 24-07. This is an ordinance to create section 428-10, sale of fermented malt beverages in public parks in our city code. This is here from Mr. Lampy and Park Recreation and Forestry on the first reading. Is there a motion on this one? Motion by Mr. Lampy. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bartz. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'm thankful for the opportunity for us all to speak tonight to this. I think it's due a long conversation. I want to express my surprise in seeing this proposed ordinance on the agenda tonight. I, like my fellow council members, are really faithful to read the minutes that are included in our packets. Those meeting notes are incredibly helpful in keeping each of us informed about the topics and issues being discussed at the committee level. To date, we have not received any meeting notes from the Town Square Programming Commission or the Park Rec and Forestry Commission about this particular ordinance. There was one brief mention in our packet tonight in the RDA notes. In those notes, it says that Alder Lampe shared with the RDA that there was discussion about permitting city employees to sell alcohol. So I traced things back by looking at the publicly available packets and found that the Town Square Programming Commission proposed and discussed this brand new ordinance on January 3rd. We don't really know the details of that discussion or the votes because no meeting notes are currently available. By it, I assume it passed because the Park Rec and Forestry Commission discussed it on January 15th. Again, there are no meeting notes, so we don't know what issues were raised. We don't know if it was a unanimous vote or what the vote was. So the next thing I think it would be good for us to do is actually take a look at the ordinance that it is in our packet. And so if you turn to that ordinance, there are two different things. At the top it says it is sponsored by Dan Bartz and that it came from the Benson Family Town Square Commission. So two things there. I put on your desk tonight the charter for the Town Square Programming Commission that we as a council approved back in April. And you'll notice just quickly that the official name of the commission isn't correct on the ordinance. It's not technically called the Benson Family Town Square Commission. But more importantly, if you flip that charter over to the back, there are the 5 duties that we included in this charter. These are the duties of the commission. And if you just kind of glance through those duties, I would say that there is a fair argument to be made that proposing a new ordinance at the commission level is outside the realm of those duties that we included in that charter. But for the sake of the people in the audience and listening in, let's go ahead and just read that ordinance really quickly. It says, pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 125.06, fermented malt beverages may be sold by officers or employees of the City of Watertown at designated stations within the confines of the Benson Family Town Square and Riverside Park at times designated by the park director. It's quite broad there. But it mentions the state statute 125.06. I'll just read that briefly. It's brief anyway. But it says, fermented malt beverages shall be sold by officers or employees of the county or municipality under an ordinance, resolution, rule, or regulation enacted by the governing body. I think that's kind of wise of the Wisconsin state statute. Basically what it's saying is, okay, you can do this, but first things first, your local community needs to talk it out. It needs to come to agreement with that ordinance, rule, or regulation. And I think that's what we're doing tonight, or we should do and have the opportunity to do. Let's talk this out a little bit. Just as a little point of interest, any guesses as to when this Wisconsin state statute hit the books? I'll tell you. It was 1981. This is not new. So for the past 43 years, no Watertown mayor or council has passed an ordinance that would allow city taxpayer-funded employees to sell beer. For 43 years, the City of Watertown has operated without having city taxpayer-funded bartenders. So this is really actually an important conversation for us to have tonight. It's a key philosophical discussion. What is the role of city government? What should the role of the Watertown city government be? What business and activities should our local government be about? And how should we responsibly spend taxpayer funds? As I mentioned, I was really surprised that this ordinance was on the agenda because of the impact of this decision. It's far-reaching. It impacts city finances. It impacts the public health and safety of our community, licensing, all of these things. But those committees haven't had a chance to discuss that until tonight. So if we take this ordinance to where it will naturally lead, let's consider Riverside Park. If we were to pass this ordinance at Riverside Park, in that snack shop, a city employee could sell beer right next to those stands right by the ballpark. But it also opens up summer beer gardens that could be right there in our pristine and historic Riverside Park. It also opens up for people, rent a bartender, a city bartender for your marriage at Riverside Park. All of these things become possibilities if this ordinance passes. It's a potential whole new business venture with employees, expenditures, revenue and risks, but what are the costs? And also, what does this mean for the taxpayers? I actually think that it has the potential to be pretty insulting to taxpayers. Follow me on this one, and you can check me if my facts are wrong. Basically, your taxpayer money, mine, your neighbors, your parents who are living on a fixed income, their tax money is going to be used to hire, train, pay the wages for city bartenders. In addition, they're going to pay those additional wages for city employees who now have a whole different realm of administrative tasks that they're going to have to accomplish to manage all of this. Not only that, but your taxpayer money, mine, your neighbors, is going to purchase beer. But here's the kicker. Then, the city taxpayer money for that beer that they purchased and for that employee who's paid by city taxpayer money, that's all going to be turned around, and they're going to sell that beer back to your neighbor for an increased cost, all with city taxpayer money. Not only that, every single beer that is sold in Riverside Park is a beer that was not purchased at the local taverns, at the grocery store, at Quick Trip. And I know without a doubt, because we've had so many conversations here, that we are all about local business. So this is a convenient way for us to propose an ordinance that actually leverages city taxpayer money to put the city at a competitive advantage against local businesses. It really is an important discussion, a philosophical discussion. What are we going to be about here in our city? What is the business and activities? What are those things that we're going to do? Every single one of us are asked all the time, why do we have such high property taxes? And listen, I was there this past year where we worked very, very hard to have a very low increase to our property taxes. I was there, I remember. But that doesn't negate the fact that currently we still have very high property taxes. Why is that? If you wonder why, these are some of the reasons why. Because with just one simple ordinance, it's just a sentence long, we are opening up a whole new business venture, and we're broadening the role of city government to sell, to hire employees, to sell beer, and all that goes with that. Listen, I want to be really clear. I so very much value all of our city staff. They're imaginative, innovative, and the fact that they have found a possible funding solution is actually admirable. And they've run it through the commission of volunteers, and they have agreed to it. And now it's coming to us. And so what we have to do as a council is really think through, is this what we're going to be about? Because what we're able to do then is look beyond the possible impact to the town square and to the Riverside Park to say, okay, but how is this going to affect finances? How is this going to affect public health? How is this going to affect taxpayers and local businesses? And is this really the direction we want to go? Passing this ordinance, I don't think is going to be wise. It expands the role of local government in a way that we have never done before. It would be a misuse of taxpayer money, and I think it would do a grand disservice to our local businesses.
Thank you. Additional comments? Mr. Blanky.
That's tough to follow. I agree with everything Alder Davis just said, and those are a lot of my concerns as well. Two things that she just said that I really want to drive home is this ordinance is just a sentence long and it's quite broad. I would argue that it's quite vague, not broad. First of all, one of the issues is, and Erin Schrader also brought up a lot of these in her comments prior to the meeting. We have a licensing board set up to oversee who sells alcohol and what events can sell alcohol in the city. What this ordinance does is takes that out of the hands of the licensing board and puts it in one individual. Nothing against that individual, but taking it away from the licensing board and putting it in the hands of the parks director, I think, is inappropriate. Also, this ordinance never came in front of public safety, which I think this is definitely an issue that has a bearing on public safety. So the two committees that most would have had a conversation on this, the licensing board and public safety, never saw this before it came here. So in its current form and in the there's just so little laid out in this. One sentence long doesn't give any definitions in it. There's no way I can support this in its current form.
Thank you. Anybody else on this one? Oh, Mr. Moldenhauer.
Alderperson Davis, that you're taking competition now, and not between businesses, you're taking competition between the businesses and the governing body. And I myself, I could not support something like that.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
I'm going to go in a little bit different direction that my colleagues have already addressed, is that we're now expanding the scope and definition of employees' roles and responsibilities in regards to the position and pay step that they're in. We're now adding into the potential of them being asked or required to sell alcohol. And I agree with our representative from the licensing board. There's training that goes with it. There's understanding of statutes that goes with it. That so understands background checks with all of our licensing requirements. My issue is this looks like a means to generate profit, but we as a government can't be a profit-generating industry. So there's a lot of second, third, and fourth order of effects and costs that are associated with that will go into this that are either being ignored or not thought of. So it comes across as being either disingenuous or intellectually dishonest. And if our goal is to be transparent as a governing board, which is what we've all strived to do since all of us have been on here, is to increase government transparency and to improve the relationship we have with our community and our constituents, this is a huge step backwards and a huge slap in the face to everyone who's worked to follow the process, and all the Tavern League's owners and all the businesses have had gone through all the inspections they have to go through, all the licenses they have to go through, all the training they have to go through, all the associated fees, and then we're coming and going, oh, we can do it ourselves. And we can bypass that, and we can just hand wave it because we're the government, we can. That, I think, is insulting to our community and being a disservice to them. If the intent is for the city to be able to have alcohol at city function events, then we need to partner with our community and go through the process the right way, be fully transparent, and use local vendors who are properly trained, properly licensed, properly background checked, and approved bartenders so that it's not in the city's coffers and it's going back to the local community the way it's intended to. So on that, I would make a motion to table indefinitely as it stands.
We have a motion to table indefinitely. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Moldenhauer. That is not a debatable motion. So Megan, do you want to take the roll?
Schmidt?
Aye.
Wetzel? Moldenhauer? Davis? Lampy? Ford? Bartz? Blanky?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-2.
All right, let's move then to ordinance 24-08. This is to amend section 398-20 concession in the parks. This is here for Mr. Lampy and Park, Rec, and Forestry on the first reading. Mr. Lampy. Is there a motion by Lampy? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bartz. Comments or questions on this one?
Version of the change. Or the,
Stephen, do you want to summarize this one? I think I can otherwise. There used to be a percentage that we would charge people as a concessionaire's fee in our parks, and what that's doing is, it was a percentage of your sales. And so what this is doing on the backside on page 127, Christine has laid out, it's creating, instead of a percentage of sales, essentially flat fees for concessioning in parks, and then the different types of concessioning. Is that a fair summary?
Correct.
I think the big question is, does this correlate to the one that they just tabled?
It wouldn't necessarily.
Nope, I just want to put it out there because I'm sure some people are like, well, do those go together? So I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. Ms. Davis.
I just wanted an example. I had a few questions. Let me see if I can recall them. The first question I have is for letter C. I wanted to know who would be charged. Can you give me an example of who would be charged the $250 per event? I'm trying to think of the scenario for that. Mm-hmm.
So when we discussed this one, this was not necessarily pertaining to special events. So not special events.
Okay.
Not the city.
Okay.
Which would be the previous ordinance, for example. But basically anything that fell into that other category.
But what is that? I don't know that that exists for Park and Rec.
Christine, do you have any examples you can provide?
Are we talking just for alcohol, or are we talking for food and all of the?
Do you have an
all
example
the,
of someone that would be in item C, intoxicating beverage concessionaire, which is any concessionaire? Yep, go ahead.
So if somebody wanted to come in and just host an event, obviously at that point with alcohol involved, it would be a special event. But if they wanted to host an event at the town square, they would then pay $250 to have an alcohol event.
But my question is, and you guys got to help me out on licensing board, I think that might only apply to temporary brewers permit people. Because nonprofits already fall in your park and rec code as exempt from this, according to the code. And the only other people, so I think it might only apply
Sorry.
to a brewer's permit, temporary brewer's permit.
It would be like for a brewfinity that would come in, or something of that nature, somebody that can come in and actually sell. It would not be a nonprofit.
I think it's only, yes, a temporary brewer's permit. Okay, that answers that question. Back to the merchant concessionaire, $25 an event. Any concessionaire not using a park shelter or facility, which is selling merchandise not for consumption. So is there an option for someone who is using a park shelter or facility?
They would have to then rent the shelter.
They wouldn't be charged the concession fee?
So we had a concession in park ordinance. And with that ordinance, it was based on anybody selling in parks. It was a percentage of, and those are very hard to track. So we decided to come up with a set, which we ran through the Benson Family Town Square Commission. We ran it through Park and Rec Commission, and then we also ran it past the city attorney, who told us what direction to take it in. This was the next step. What we were trying to do was just create a flat fee across the board for people selling in parks.
I think that's a great idea, a flat fee. I was just trying to think scenarios. And I'll just throw my last one out. It's the B. So would that apply to like food trucks, like let's say a Chick-fil-A that comes to sell in a food truck? So that's the non-intoxicating beverage concessionaire who's selling food or beverage, it says.
Correct.
Okay.
So like the first one would be like a merchant selling socks. The second one would be food or non-intoxicating beverages such as Chick-fil-A or Maria's or any other food vendor tent that would like to come in and sell. And then the third one would be for all of the brewfinities and what have you. I do believe, I think I misspoke before, we were actually talking about charging the nonprofits because they are coming in and basically profiting off of an event or what have you. And if they were running an event, they would still have to pay that fee. So, sorry for the miscommunication earlier.
So I understand the wanting to simplify things. I'll just throw two things out. One is $75 enough if Chick-fil-A comes? Is that all we want to charge Chick-fil-A's truck? And the second thing I will throw out is if you are intending to charge the nonprofits, then there's other code revision you need to do to your code. So I'll rest.
Any others? Yes.
So the ordinance itself, the one on page 47, essentially refers to the fees and charges policy. So looking at page 48, which has got the specific things, I think there might be a hole in there as regards to whether or not merchant concessionaires are inside or outside. And then I think there is also some clarification that's warranted as per the nonprofit thing. But essentially, what's meant by the ordinance is that those are meant to essentially to be kicked out to the administrative side for the review and revision. So I think we've got a couple things to clear up here, but the overall intent of the memo is go to flat fee, get rid of the percentage, and basically put this in a easy readable chart that people can come in and participate in, but.
And then Park Rec and Forestry approves the fees and charges policy?
Yes.
Did you have something, Mr. Board?
I'm just curious if we know what people were charged in 2023 for these services. And
No.
when we looked at the other ordinance, we went back through and looked at charges that had been made. How did these numbers come about? Did we pull them out of a hat, or are they based on
Christine, do you have any
statistics?
insight on that part?
Yeah, we looked at other communities and what they were charging, and we also looked at what our partnering, like the chamber and everyone was charging for their events and such. So we decided to kind of be in the middle. We do not want to, in any manner, try to compete with people. So we really try to work with everyone, and we have been trying very hard to do that the past 18 months. And this was something that, I mean, we have a lot of those people on both the Town Square Commission and on Park and Rec that were in favor of this. It did not come without much discussion.
Mr. Blanky?
Yeah. So, just to be 100% clear, the fee schedule laid out here isn't married to the ordinance change.
The memo? No.
That's
No.
simply a recommendation. We can revisit the fee schedule at a later date and make
Park and Rec,
changes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Park and Rec does the fee schedule.
Right.
So yes, they can.
So, overall, I like this ordinance because I think it actually, by changing it to a flat fee, it will generate more interest in having vendors selling in the park for events, baseball games, softball games, and whatnot. And just the simplified aspect of it, hey, it's going to cost us $25. If we have a great day in sales, we're going to make a ton for our organization. Whereas, oh, hey, it's going to cost us 10%, so if we have a great day in sales, it's going to cost our organization $200. So I like the change of going with a flat fee.
Thank you. Mr. Molnar?
The question, when you say event, is that a day or if they're, like the American Legion has their 4th of July out the Riverside Park, would that be charged per day, or is that for the total event?
I believe the intent and discussion was event, not that there's really a whole lot of multi-day events.
But for something like that, be just a one-time charge then?
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt?
I agree. I think a flat fee schedule is a very convenient thing. It's easy to use. I have a couple concerns, and the first concern is that it wasn't, this is what it costs us, and so this is going to be a wash overall, a net zero for cost. It's, what other communities are doing. That's a pet peeve of mine. If the first thing out of our mouth to defend something is, well, the other communities are doing this, so we should. If we're going to change something, it should be because this is what it costs us, and we're just trying to make it a flat fee and more convenient and more welcoming to events to come in. Secondly, if there's concerns of interpretation of how it applies to different groups, or if there's holes in it, we should kick it back, address those holes, clean up those holes, get rid of those holes so it's clear and concise, and there's no room for misinterpretation or interpreting it two different ways.
Can I speak on that one? So
Yes.
what you all are really considering is what's on what I'm showing is the front page, right?
Mhm.
In your packet, somehow you also got this memo that Christine wrote.
Mhm.
This doesn't live in our code. This memo doesn't. So all you would be voting on tonight is what you see redlined on this front sheet of paper. You would be voting on what I think I heard you say you liked, which was removing the percentage, creating a schedule that's approved by Park Rec and Forestry of flat fees. I just want to bubble that up. So like if you all approve this, they'll create said schedule. Park Rec and Forestry will approve said schedule. My heavy hunch is that it won't be what's on this memo. Any other comments or questions?
Can I call the question, please?
Sure. Megan?
Lampy. Ward.
Aye.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Schmidt. Wetzel. Moldenhauer. Davis. Motion passed 9-0.
All right, let's go to our last ordinance. This is 24-09. This is to adopt amendments to the 29 comp plan for 1310 Allward Street. This is here for me and the Plan Commission with a positive recommendation on its first reading. Is there a motion on this one? Mr. Lampy.
I move to approve.
Motion by Lampy. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wetzel. What's the elephant in the room? Because this doesn't happen very often. Yes.
I think there's folks here who are concerned essentially about the direct transition from single-family homes to multifamily homes, minus a plan that's coming along with this proposal.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I'm the one who does that. So go ahead, Ms. Davis.
I'm so sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong. The school district still technically owns the property. Is that correct?
The owner is in the due diligence period. There's they've agreed on the sale. They're just going through the period of time where they can do their due diligence on the land.
I didn't see a representative from the school. Is there a representative from the school district here tonight that you know of?
No.
And I didn't see one at the public comments or at I zoomed into the plan commission, so. Because we haven't heard as a council or seen any plans or heard any plans from the school district or the developer, it's essentially as if there are two empty chairs in this room. But we have had the public show up and express their concerns. My last question is, currently, it's my understanding that the future use is for institutional, but it is currently zoned as single family. Is that correct? That it currently is zoned as single family?
Brian, do you want to answer that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Go get the background for the positive recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Do you want to provide that?
Sure. So the Planning Commission, we did have an extensive discussion on this, and it did come out with positive recommendation because the feeling was that this is step one in a process. And anything that would happen with a multifamily development would have to come in front of the Plan Commission again and be approved at that time. So the concept was there's the possibility of a developer who is looking at that area, they're a multifamily developer, and that this was opening the door to get the ball rolling on that.
Is that helpful? Mr. Smith?
Yes, I am very concerned about this proposal and its long-term implications. If this were to be a proposal to change the city's long-term plan for returning this to the tax rolls as a anticipated single-family area, I would support it. There would be a tremendous benefit with that amount of acreage to have proper development on the site and return it to the tax rolls. But this proposal is a marked deviation from any expectation that has existed for this area for decades. I remember when this subdivision started, and it was started with a vision of a neighborhood approach. If you look at the boundaries of this area, pretty much everything within this area is single-family development. That area is North 4th Street as a boundary, Juneau Street, Allward Street, and eastward to the city boundary. All of that is single-family with the exception of a neighborhood park and a large parcel of land, almost 25% of that broader neighborhood area envisioned for an elementary school. Now it probably will not be an elementary school, and the potential for proper development is very real. But what is not appropriate is to anticipate a massive deviation from anything that was ever anticipated for that area and transfer without any indication of what type of multifamily development would go in there, and just make that the goal, the anticipated appropriate use within the scope of our comprehensive plan, that is the highest and best use for that massive area and current undeveloped acreage. So you say, well, multifamily, that's pretty broad. We can control density. We can do all manner of things, even to disapprove development as it ultimately is proposed for that area. Let me tell you this. If we start down the road of designating this huge parcel as appropriately envisioned as multifamily housing, that is the first step in what will become a built-out, massive area of multifamily housing, and the simple progression of residential development is to maximize profit, you make it as dense as you possibly can. Why open the door to having to fight that battle down the road? We entered into in my concept of relationship between government and the people we represent, we entered into a trust relationship with people that built out a single-family neighborhood in a subdivision surrounded exclusively within the scope of that neighborhood boundary, single-family homes. They invested their life savings. Their life is a part of that neighborhood. And then to willy-nilly, without any specific rationale whatsoever, take all of the remaining area, probably 25% roughly of that neighborhood area, and say we are going to change that to a massively different development concept and say that's what we envision, that's what we want, that's what we would love to have here. That is not consistent with the trust that these people in this subdivision have depended upon the city to protect. Their lifetime interest, their neighborhood. Let us not take the first step down this slippery slope and change the character of this neighborhood in a way that we can never put that genie back in the box. If the goal is to change it from institutional and we want to designate it in an appropriate way, designate it as single-family residential and let anybody else that wants to do differently come in and justify it on a specific case-by-case basis. It'd be a hard sell for me to approve it, but it should be single-family residential, and that will be the first step in getting it back on the tax rolls, not designating it as multifamily residential and just let the future take care of itself. That's not planning, that's not good government, and that is not fulfilling the trust we have as a city council for many, many people that have put their trust in us.
Are there any other comments? Yes.
I would support Fred or Alderman Smith. I too think it should stay R1 or single family.
Anybody else on this one? Yes.
So I'm more of a pro-development, this particular parcel. This is something I think that the city's been in contact with the school district for a while to basically, understand, are you going to build a school there? Are you going to move it back into institutional? Or is it a viable property? One of the few that's already, as far as I understand, near and dear to city services. Is it a developable lot that we can actually use for residential housing, which is a scarcity in this house, in this place and other ones? The economic reality right now seems to be that the only thing that is getting built en masse in Watertown is multifamily housing. And even in some of the other situations that we're potentially considering, we're looking at aspects of subsidizing to get single-family homes built. And so I believe that if we go down that road where we are looking at, asking for a mix of single-family and multifamily housing, we have to be prepared right off the bat that we are probably also going to be challenged with, and what is the city going to do to essentially help us fund the single-family homes. We are not encountering any developers who are coming in and asking for large parcels to be developed as single-family. We are not necessarily encountering people who want to do this out of the goodness of their heart. For economic purposes, the only thing that's coming in and is viable right now is multifamily. So I am very open to the idea of having a single-family buffer, but I also wanted to make sure that that is going to come with a consequence of we are also going to be investing in that area, just as we're looking at investing in other areas with single-family housing.
Mr. Blanky, did you have something?
Yes. So full disclosure, I did support this coming out of Plan Commission. Since that time, I've been contacted by numerous residents of the area, all of which were very respectful in their comments. And they've convinced me that the multifamily is not necessarily the correct way to go in this manner. And I understand exactly what you said. The only people building right now are multifamily. The question is, are we going to regret making that decision in two years, 3 years? We don't know what the future holds. However, one of the points that I've made is we need to be consistent. This council, yes, we're independent of whatever a council did 10 years ago. However, we should have some respect for what they did looking to the future. And this is what they envisioned. They didn't envision the multifamily and especially abutting directly up to single family. And without a plan in place where there's some sort of buffer, like some more single family before multifamily, anything like that, possibly could change my mind again in the future. But I know that I wouldn't want an 8-unit apartment building in my backyard. So as it is now, even though I supported it out of Plan Commission on the floor, I'm not going to be able to.
Yes.
I'm confused. It says that we're rezoning this from institutional to multifamily, and yet I heard that its current zoning is residential. I guess I need to know which one it is.
We're using words interchangeably. What this is changing is its future land use, which is different than its zoning.
So its current zoning
Is
is residential,
We're
and its
changing it.
master plan to institutional.
Yes, and it will never be institutional, and so we're suggesting changing that.
Won't be there, they're not going to build. So the adjoining parcels are actually two-family residential on the opposite side of Allward and on to the south of the property.
Into the far north.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that's not where the Planning Commission went. That would have been a more logical approach for me than multifamily, because you don't know what you're going to get with multifamily.
Other comments? Yeah.
I don't like to say much when I agree with what has already been said. I don't need to pile on with my comments that echo somebody else's, especially for time-wise and everything. But tonight, I was waiting for Alder Smith to say there was a gentleman's agreement. Basically, a gentleman's agreement saying we're going to have this as single-family homes when these folks came and bought their houses or built their houses. I just read a book again last week for the second time. I read it about 20 years ago in 1984. And it's easy to go ahead and say this is kind of like we're forgetting what was said at the beginning. an agreement, this is going to be a single-family development. And it's like the big brother coming in saying, well, no, we never said that. It's kind of a microcosm of that. Not that anybody here in the council ever would have thought, hey, we're big brother, we're coming in and stomping on citizens. But just in my mind, I envisioned that with this whole process here.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is probably less of a statement than a question. I mean, I'm very hesitant to make any action that's essentially going to kill this or essentially drive the developer off. I mean, what are our possibilities if we have additional questions, if we want to know what the limits are, if they basically would come back to the city and ask for money to put in the single-family strip? I mean, what's the avenue to continue negotiations without killing this since it's sitting in here at council?
I had a similar thought in my head. So is there, I don't know if you have an answer to that, Stephen, or if there's repercussions of an action by the council?
It would likely depend on the action that the council took. The matter could be tabled for a period of time, a couple months or whatever, or weeks, to give the developer time to come to the table and discuss those matters. Otherwise, there are always options to rescind a vote that was taken, which can be done a period of time afterwards to void out whatever action the council was to take tonight. As long as it doesn't have any negative effects on any other party, then that's something that the council would have the ability to do for a prior action that it took. So there are some avenues that the city would be able to take regardless of what actions are taken here tonight. It just depends on what action is actually taken by the...
I remember we had a project, I can't remember if it was a rezone or a land use change, but the action said because of denial, we couldn't bring it back for a year. Is that anything that would come into play here? I think that was on the North 4th Street multifamily apartments. The ones that are to the north of this neighborhood, in my backyard.
I would have to double check the statutes to see if there's a specific reference to a future land plan zone.
I just want to make sure, because I think what you're asking is, let's not do something that's going to make a bigger problem. And I think what I'm hearing the city attorney say is, you can table, you can vote and rescind after the fact, and you're unaware if there's an action that would prohibit this from coming back. Is that a correct summary?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Much as I hate to do this, because I do agree with Mr. Lampy, I look for development for the community, and we know we need more housing units. But for fear of that conversation, I'll make a motion that we table this.
Second.
Do we want a date or a time period? Or are you fine with just a motion to table?
Preferably a time period.
For 1 month.
Okay.
2 meetings.
Is that fine with you? Okay, so it's a motion by board, a second by Mr. Bartz. I'm glad I pulled out my cheat sheet tonight. That is not debatable. So go ahead, Megan. It's not debatable.
If this is a tabling motion, it's not debatable. But if it's what the city attorney said, which is a postponement to a date certain, that is debatable.
I heard a motion to table out of Mr. Board. Is that what you moved?
For 1 month.
A motion to table for 1 month.
For a specific period of time, which makes it debatable.
Let me get out my cheat sheet, Mr. Smith. So I say I move to table. Do you need a second? Yes. Is it debatable? No.
Right, but a tabling motion is an indefinite motion, and you are changing the substance of the motion by establishing a limitation, which makes it a different motion, regardless what the terminology you used.
The next one I have says postpone to a time certain. Is that what you're suggesting?
And that is much more analogous to a postponement for a 30-day period of time.
Would you prefer me to change the motion to a postponement for 30 days?
I think any time a council has a choice between making a motion that is debatable and a motion that is not debatable, it should always choose a motion that's debatable. Otherwise, you cut off debate needlessly.
Well, we're already debating, so why don't we just continue?
Which was my hesitation, because we cut off debate for the previous item that we tabled.
Well, we're already debating.
Which is why I voted no. So I will change my motion to postpone this discussion for 30 days. Is that better?
Postpone to a time certain needs us, would you like to second that? So we're keeping it, and sure, you can debate that one. What would you like to debate on that, folks? Mr. Smith?
What I would like to debate is, I would like to make a definitive statement by voting down the proposal to change this to multifamily. All we're doing is kicking this down the road, and I would vote against this subsidiary motion to try to get a vote on the substance of the motion, because we're discussing, when you talk about the comprehensive plan, you're talking about the future of the city. And that's the sort of thing that should be debated from the perspective of the city's long-term best interest, and to even keep alive the notion that this is appropriately designated as multifamily housing is not a wise way to move forward. And I believe that what would be in the city's best interest is to vote down the proposal to change this in the comprehensive plan to multifamily, and let a more reasonable proposal come forward, whatever it is. Let the Planning Commission do their work and come back with something. Don't keep this alive for a 30-day period, so we simply come back and say many of the same things. It's either in the city's best future interest or it isn't, and I can tell you I don't think it is, but I can tell you it for certain is not in the best interest of this neighborhood, which is a large subdivision area who has put trust in us as a governing body to do the right thing. And keeping multifamily alive is anything but honoring their trust.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to keep alive was an opportunity for the city to talk to the developer. One of the major issues that the residents have brought up is there's no documentation as to what multiple family is on that parcel. And this gives the developer an opportunity to present it to the city, and then we can make an intelligent decision as to whether we think that is advantageous to those residents or not.
I'm going to share this. I shared this at Planning Commission. This is factual. The developer didn't request this future land use change. I shared this at Planning Commission. We opened up the code for a variety of items. What we've tried to do is couple those items because we pay fees every time we publish the change of zoning. We knew we had a couple of other changes. We knew this wouldn't be institutional. We knew we had a multifamily project in the pipe. We took it upon ourselves to make the land use change. So, and I've shared that with the residents, like the developer isn't trying to be cagey. I don't want anyone to think that. It's just they're doing their due diligence, as I shared with Ms. Davis, and we were trying to be proactive and save us publishing money. Really, it's that, like, there's nothing like hidden about it. So I don't even know if the developer will have schematic drawings in a month. But I just don't want any perception that this was developer-driven and that they aren't presenting plans intentionally. It's nowhere near that. Okay, what else? Yeah.
Change to like a single-family type situation. I wonder how many developers might come forward, because now it's been for an institutional type deal. I mean, have we got anybody even asking about single-family building out there?
The property was for sale for well over a year, and the only two projects that spoke to us were multifamily projects. There was no single-family developers that spoke to us. Any other questions or comments on the motion to postpone to a time certain? So that's all we're voting on. I'm going to ask Megan to take the roll in just a second. You're just voting on the motion to postpone this land use change for 1 month. Megan.
Ford.
Yes.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
No.
Smith.
No.
Schmid.
No.
Wetzel. Moldenhauer. Davis. Lampy.
Yes.
Motion failed. 3 to
Okay,
5.
so now we're back to just the original ordinance. We have a motion and a second to approve it. Does anyone have any additional comments on the original motion? to approve the ordinance? Megan?
Lampy.
Aye.
Board.
No.
Bartz.
No.
Blanky.
No.
Smith. Schmid.
No.
Wetzel. Moldenhauer. Davis. Motion failed, 1-8.
All right, let's go to resolutions. The first is Exhibit 9577. This is a resolution to approve the updated purchasing policy. This is here from me and the Finance Committee. Yep. Motion by Mr. Lampy, second by Mr. Schmid. Comments or questions? Will you please take the roll?
Lampy. Board. Bartz. Blanky. Smith. Schmid. Wetzel. Moldenhauer. Davis. Motion passed 9-0.
Next is Exhibit 9578, and if you're willing to, I would take 9579 together. They're the same topic, different parcels, different developers. This is to, are you comfortable with taking them together? We'll just take them separate. Let's take just Exhibit 9578. This is to authorize the release of escrowed funds from the Grandview Heights Edition Number 7. This is here from me and the Plan Commission. Motion by Mr. Board.
Second.
Second by Mr. Blanky. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Next is Exhibit 9579. Same thing, just for the Hep Heights Phase 3 subdivision. Again, for me and the Plan Commission. Mr. Bartz? Second by Mr. Wetzel. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And our last resolution is Exhibit 9580. This is a resolution to enter into the agreement for the 2024-26 tourism promotion services with Watertown Tourism and the City of Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce. Again, me and the Finance Committee. Mr. Lampy.
I would so move.
Motion by Lampy, second by Mr. Board. Comments or questions for anybody on this one? Sure.
Just a housekeeping item in terms of the percentage that's on page 1. Do we have to worry about that at all? It's 3 hours ago.
Are you talking the 30/70? I mean, what percentage are you alluding to?
The second paragraph at the end of the whereas, where it talks about the rate at 5%, not 8.
City tax is 8%.
Oh, sure. That probably should change.
We can amend it to update that. Or,
Do you want a motion to amend this agreement?
yeah.
Would you like to do that?
Yeah, motion to
Thank you.
amend that from 5 to
Right.
8%
We'll
then.
support that.
We're going to have a motion to amend. We're in the first whereas clause. The rate at 5%, we've recently changed that to 8%. Effective April 1. We have a motion by Mr. Lampy, and I think there was a second by Mr. Board. Questions on just that piece? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so now we're at an amended version of this agreement. Any additional comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, very good. We are at the point for comments from citizens present. If anyone would like to comment, or anyone remotely. All right, with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion, who was that?
Everybody?
Oh, motion by Mr. Blanky, second by Mr. Wetzel. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Can we have the motion just reflect everybody?